Welcome to today's Explainer. Now, when you hear the phrase Ark of the Covenant, let's be honest, your mind probably jumps straight to blockbuster movies, staring archaeologists, and maybe some melting faces. It's kind of become this massive pop culture myth. But before it was the ultimate holy grail of missing historical treasures, it was something so much more profound. It was literally the mobile command center of an ancient faith. So today, we're stripping away the Hollywood fiction. We're going straight to the historical and biblical texts to uncover the real origins, the incredibly specific construction, and the absolute sacred significance of this ancient artifact.
To really wrap our heads around what the Ark of the Covenant was, we have to rewind the clock over 3,000 years. We have to look past its modern reputation as just a missing treasure and try to understand it as the absolute, unquestioned, most sacred object of ancient Israel. I mean, think about it. Who built this thing? Why was it considered so intensely powerful that entire enemy armies literally trembled at the mere mention of it? And how did a wooden box wrapped in gold shape the identity of an entire civilization?
To answer those questions, here is the roadmap for our journey today. First, we'll cover from Egypt to Sinai. Then, the blueprint of the sacred chest. Third, we'll look inside the sacred ark. Fourth, surviving the harsh wilderness. And finally, symbol of a unified nation. Okay, let's jump right in.
Section 1. From Egypt to Sinai.
Okay, let's set the stage here. According to ancient tradition, the Israelites have been living in Egypt for generations, eventually falling into brutal enslavement. And then comes the big turning point, the Exodus. Moses leads this massive escape right out of Egypt, taking them straight into the unforgiving wilderness on a long march toward the Promised Land. And it's during this incredibly grueling journey that Moses climbs Mount Sinai and receives God's commandments. These are the laws that would become the absolute bedrock of the Israelite faith. But having these laws actually created a completely new and pretty massive logistical challenge.
Because here's the core problem staring them in the face. They are a wandering, displaced people. They don't have a city. They don't have some grand stone temple to store important things. Yet, they desperately needed a secure, sacred place to preserve these brand new holy laws. And honestly, it went beyond just storage. They needed a tangible physical representation of God's presence right there with them in the middle of a barren, terrifying desert. It's a deeply human thing, right? When you're displaced, you need a physical anchor to hold onto your identity. For the Israelites, solving this exact problem led to the creation of one of the most famous artifacts in human history.
Section 2. Blueprint of the Sacred Chest.
Now, they didn't just throw this thing together out of scraps. The book of Exodus lays out highly meticulous, incredibly specific blueprints for the ark. And this specificity is exactly what grounds the myth in historical reality. The chest was built from acacia wood, which is a super tough, durable wood native to the desert. But then, they took it to the next level by totally overlaying it, inside and out with pure gold. Dimension-wise was about 1.3 meters long and roughly 0.8 meters wide and high. So to put that into perspective, it's about the size of a standard cedar chest you might have at the foot of your bed. But the handling mechanism, that was ingenious. They attached these solid gold rings to the sides and inserted long carrying poles. Why? Because this object was considered so intensely sacred, so completely holy, that no human was allowed to touch the chest directly. The poles guaranteed a safe, reverent distance.
And crowning this magnificent chest was something deeply awe-inspiring. They called it the mercy seat. This was a special top cover, and standing right on top of it were two golden cherubim, these majestic, angelic figures. They were positioned facing each other with their wings spread wide open, angling down toward the cover itself. It's a stunning visual, but it wasn't just decorative. It was highly symbolic. The Israelites viewed the space between those wings as the literal throne or the footstool of the divine presence when they worshipped.
Section 3. Inside the Sacred Ark.
So what's actually inside this golden box? Well, the contents were the real treasure. First and absolutely foremost, the ark housed the stone tablets inscribed with the 10 commandments that Moses brought down from the mountain. This is huge because these tablets literally represented the covenant, the binding legal and spiritual contract between God and the Israelites. Now, some historical traditions mention that over time, it also held a few other sacred objects linked to their miraculous survival in the desert. But make no mistake, those laws were the undisputed centerpiece.
And because of what it held inside, the ark completely transcended its physical materials. It was no longer just wood and gold. It became the ultimate symbol of divine guidance, absolute protection, and the literal presence of God moving among his people. Wherever this chest went, the entire religious and communal life of the Israelites revolved around it. It was, quite literally, the physical anchor for a nation on the move.
Section 4. Surviving the Harsh Wilderness.
So, a quick reality check here. How does a priceless, solid gold artifact survive a brutal, multi-decade march across an unforgiving desert? It survived because of the tabernacle. When the Israelites were traveling, the ark was carefully placed inside this incredibly complex sacred tent. Think of the tabernacle as a fully functional, highly guarded, portable sanctuary. It gave this nomadic group a highly structured place of worship centuries before a permanent stone temple was ever an option. They would pack the whole thing up, march across the sand, and then meticulously set it all back up with the ark positioned perfectly at the very center.
And this really shows just how dynamic their faith was. The ark wasn't just sitting in storage somewhere gathering dust, it was active. When it was time to move camp, it was hoisted up and carried exclusively by specially chosen priests. It commanded the highest possible level of respect. But most importantly, ancient accounts describe the ark physically leading the people during the absolute most critical moments of their journey. It was right there at the front of the line, guiding them through hostile territories, parting waters, and acting as both their compass and their shield.
Section 5. Symbol of a unified nation.
Eventually, that incredibly long, exhausting physical journey through the wilderness comes to an end as the Israelites cross into and settle the land of Canaan. And here we see a fascinating shift. There is this massive contrast between what the ark was materially and what it represented culturally. Physically, sure, it's still a 1.3-meter wooden chest covered in gold. But its spiritual significance had become immeasurable. As the Israelites transitioned from a group of wandering tribes into a settled, agricultural society, the ark was front and center at every major national ceremony. It had evolved into their unifying banner, the proof of their shared history, and the absolute core of their identity as a brand new nation.
Fast forward a bit, and you have entire generations growing up hearing these wild, incredible stories of the wilderness, the desert miracles, and the sheer power radiating from this golden chest. So, it was really only a matter of time before the nation's leaders wanted to honor it with something more permanent than a tent. Eventually, King David would dream of building a grand, permanent home for the ark, and his son, King Solomon, would be the one to actually make that dream a reality, ultimately placing the ark deep inside the breathtaking temple in Jerusalem, which, by the way, was one of the most magnificent structures of the ancient world. But having this grand, secure home makes the ultimate fate of the ark so incredibly baffling. It was the undisputed center of their world, locked away inside an impenetrable fortress of worship, until suddenly it wasn't. So, what on earth happened? How does a nation's most treasured, most heavily guarded, and deeply revered symbol simply vanish? Poof, gone from the historical record without a single trace. Well, that is exactly the dramatic mystery we are going to unravel the next time we dive into the sources. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.